I asked my husband where $124,000 had gone. He didn't even take his coat off. He dropped his leather briefcase onto the sofa. The clasp snapped open, spilling nothing but empty folders. He looked at me like I was a stranger taking up space in his living room. Family doesn't ask for receipts. Stop acting like a bank. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I just watched him walk to the kitchen and pour a scotch. I didn't know it yet, but that missing money wasn't just gone. It had built an entire second life right down the road. If you are listening to this right now, drop a comment with your local time and where you are tuning in from. If you have ever had someone use the word family to hide a horrid sin, stay with me, because this started long before tonight. 6 years of retained earnings from Derek's construction company. That was what the $124,000 was supposed to be. My name is Julia. I spent the last 6 years as a licensed escrow officer, managing millions of dollars in real estate transactions for strangers. At home, I let my husband handle the internal books. When you love someone, you don't audit them. That was the rule he laid down early on. I went straight to my home office. I walked inside and locked the door. I pulled 3 cardboard boxes out from the bottom shelf of the closet. 6 years of old material invoices and tax returns. I spread the papers across the rug. I picked up the first commercial lease I ever notarized for his business. He had smiled that day, sliding the paperwork across my desk, telling me how lucky he was to have a legal expert in the house. I traced the signature with my finger. The smoke and mirrors of lies had been there from day one. It wasn't love. He hadn't married a partner. He had married a free legal shield for his company. At 2 a.m, I found it. A glaring discrepancy in the tax ID numbers on 3 different supply invoices. I opened my laptop to check the routing history on our joint checking account. The screen flashed gray. Access denied. He had changed the password while I was sitting in the next room. I called the bank's 24-hour customer service line. The automated voice clicked over to a representative. She asked for my authorization PIN. I gave it. "I'm sorry, ma'am," she said. "You are not listed as the primary account holder. I cannot release phone statements without his verbal consent." He thought shutting me out of a screen would stop me. He forgot what I do for a living. At 8:30 the next morning, I sat at my desk at the title company. The air conditioning hummed. My coffee sat untouched, forming a thin film on the surface. For 6 years, I had lived on a strict budget. I packed my own lunches, skipped vacations, and worked 50-hour weeks to ensure Derek's construction firm had a solid foundation. We agreed to keep the company's retained earnings untouched. $124,500. That was the exact number I had sacrificed for. It was supposed to be our safety net. Now I knew it was funding a secret transaction I couldn't even see. A junior clerk named Kevin walked up and dropped a thick, notarized escrow file on my desk. "They want to expedite the commercial closing by noon," he said, tapping the cover. "The buyer is pushing hard." I opened the folder. I ran my pen down the chain of title, scanning the property history. I stopped at page 14. There was a missing signature from a secondary trust beneficiary, dated 3 years ago. It was a small clerical error, but it meant the seller didn't fully own what they were trying to sell. "Freeze the transaction," I said. Kevin blinked, leaning back. "But the buyer is threatening to pull out. The brokers are going to scream." I closed the folder and slid it back across the desk. "Let them scream. The deed is defective. Nobody signs anything, and no money moves until I clear the title." He nodded quickly and took the file away. I watched him go. I had the authority to halt a $3 million commercial sale with a single sentence, yet I couldn't even view my own husband's tax returns. On my lunch break, I tried to access Derek's corporate ledger. I hit a digital wall. His business accounts were managed by a private, third-party accounting firm. I called the main office, posing a generic question about our joint filings. The receptionist politely informed me that any access to the corporate ledgers required a dual authorization physical token. Derek had the only one. I thanked her in a perfectly level voice and hung up. For the next 4 hours, I answered emails, approved wires, and smiled at my coworkers. I kept my hands flat on my desk so nobody would see them shaking. That was the price of digging in the dark. You had to pretend you weren't standing in a hole. At 4:30, I locked my computer and picked up my purse. I had to go home and put on a silver dress. Tonight was our 9th wedding anniversary dinner, and his entire family would be there. My own marriage was built on a fraudulent deed, and it was time to sit across from the man who forged it. The restaurant was deafening. It was one of those upscale Italian places downtown where the tables were packed too close together. I wore the silver dress Derek had picked out for our 9th anniversary. I sat at the head of a long table, surrounded by 12 members of my in-laws. Marcus sat directly across from me. He was Derek's older brother and the lead contractor for their shared construction projects. He had hands like cinder blocks and a voice that carried over the ambient noise of 50 other conversations. When the dessert plates were cleared, Marcus tapped his butter knife against his wine glass. The sharp ringing sound cut through the chatter. The table quieted down. 9 years, Marcus said, raising his glass toward us. To Derek and Julia, a lot of people talk about family values, but these two actually put their money where their mouth is. I kept my smile pinned in place. Derek sat beside me, his arm draped casually over the back of my chair. I have to say this, Meg, Marcus continued, looking right at me. Setting up that internal family trust to buy a house for your sister Chloe, that takes a real saint. Not many wives would agree to pull company capital to bail out their own sister. The restaurant noise dropped out completely. When I was 12 years old, I took the blame for a broken window so Chloe wouldn't lose her television privileges. I spent my entire adolescence cleaning up my younger sister's messes, absorbing her punishments, and smoothing over her mistakes. It was the role I was born into. And now, apparently, I had bought her an entire house. And the timing couldn't be better, Marcus said with a wide grin. I saw little Leo yesterday. I swear to God, when that 6-year-old kid smiles, he looks exactly like you, Derek. It's almost spooky. Derek's arm dropped from my chair. He stood up so fast his knee slammed into the underside of the table. The silver forks rattled against the porcelain plates. All right, Marcus. That's enough speeches for one night, Derek said. His voice was too loud. He grabbed the wine bottle by the neck and leaned over the table. He filled his brother's glass until the dark red liquid nearly spilled over the rim. Drink up. We're celebrating. My fingers curled around the stem of my wine glass. The glass was cold and sweating. I didn't drop it. I didn't gasp. I raised the glass to my lips, smiled directly at Marcus, and took a slow sip. I played the part of the gracious, clueless wife flawlessly. The math locked into place. The missing $124,500 wasn't just a business expense. It was a secret trust fund. My husband was raising a 6-year-old son with my own sister. 20 minutes later, people started grabbing their coats. I saw Marcus heading toward the coat check alone. I stepped away from the table and walked quickly toward him. Marcus, I said, keeping my voice light. Quick question about that trust you mentioned. A hand clamped down on my bicep. Hard. Derek pulled me backward. His grip was tight enough to leave bruises on my skin. He smiled down at me, his teeth perfectly white under the chandelier. Not now, Meg, Derek said, steering me forcefully toward the front door. My mother wants a group photo outside. I let him pull me away from Marcus. I didn't fight him. I didn't need to. I had a target now. An internal family trust. Tomorrow, I would hunt it down. Exactly at 3:15 on Tuesday afternoon, I closed my office door and pulled down the blinds. The title company was quiet. I logged into the state property registry using my senior escrow credentials. I didn't search for Derek's name. I knew better than that. I searched for the exact name of the family trust Marcus had toasted to the night before. The database buffered for 3 seconds. Then it pulled up a hidden limited liability company registered to a post office box 2 towns over. I clicked on the linked assets. There was one residential property listed under the company umbrella. It was a 4-bedroom house on the north side of town, purchased 3 years ago in a straight cash transaction. The closing amount was $124,500. Not a penny more, not a penny less. My safety net hadn't just evaporated into bad business investments. It had been converted into brick and mortar for my younger sister. I scrolled down to the original deed of trust, my eyes scanning the fine print I read for a living. I leaned closer to the monitor. The documents weren't just standard real estate transfers. They included a strict financial guarantor addendum for a minor dependent residing at the property. The dependent was listed as Leo. Under the section for biological father and primary financial provider, there was a signature in black ink. Derek's signature. It was signed, dated, and legally binding. I didn't cry. I didn't throw my coffee mug at the wall. I hit print. The heavy office printer hummed to life, slowly churning out 60 pages of cold, hard paper. I watched the sheets stack up in the output tray. Every page was a testament to the lie I had been living in. Blood ties and 9 years of marriage, reduced to a stack of legal betrayals. Chloe hadn't just made a passive mistake. She had actively helped my husband dismantle my life, and she let me babysit the result on weekends. I needed the cash flow appendix. I needed to see exactly which active accounts the monthly maintenance money was draining from. I clicked the download icon next to the corporate financial ledger. A red banner snapped across the top of my screen. The file required a 2-step verification code. To open the ledger, the system had to text a 6-digit security PIN directly to Derek's cell phone. I pulled my hand back from the mouse immediately. If I clicked the request button, Derek's phone would buzz in his pocket halfway across town. The element of surprise would be dead before I even gathered my things. I gathered the 60 warm pages from the printer and tapped them evenly against the desk. I slipped them into a thick manila envelope and sealed the clasp. The paper trail was damning, but it wasn't complete. If he was funneling current project funds to keep this property afloat, the original savings account was just the beginning. I needed to know exactly where the ongoing money was coming from. I picked up my car keys. I drove 40 miles to the county records building on Wednesday morning. I didn't try to bypass the 2-step verification on Derek's phone. Software leaves digital alarms. Paper leaves dust. I walked up to the archives desk and placed my state escrow license on the glass counter. The clerk, an older woman wearing thick silver frames, looked from the card to my face. "I need the physical ledger for this limited liability company," I said. I slid a sticky note across the glass. "Specifically, the historical wire authorizations." She tapped her keyboard. "That's a restricted corporate file. I have to log your professional credentials to pull the physical book." "Log them," I said. That was the price of stepping out of the shadows. I was putting my own career on the line, permanently tying my professional license to a private search. If Derek's accountants flagged the inquiry, I could face an ethics review and lose my job. I kept my hands still on the counter. The clerk disappeared into the back room and returned carrying a heavy, green-bound ledger. She opened it flat on the counter. I ran my index finger down the columns. Page 82. There it was. An ongoing monthly capital transfer of $4,200 flowing into the hidden LLC. I traced the line across the page to find the origin account. The money wasn't coming from Derek's personal accounts. It was being routed directly out of the commercial construction fund he shared with his older brother, Marcus. I looked at the original authorization slip stapled to the margin. It was signed in bright blue ink. The name on the signature line was Marcus, but the capital M leaned sharply to the left, finishing with a distinct, jagged hook at the top. I had seen that exact hook on every grocery list, tax return, and birthday card in my house for 9 years. Derek wasn't just draining our joint savings to put a roof over Chloe's head. He was actively embezzling project capital from his own flesh and blood. He had forged his brother's signature to feed his second family. I reached into my purse. I need a certified photocopy of this page. The clerk immediately pulled the heavy book off the counter and hugged it to her chest. Absolutely not. You can view the public index, but duplicating a corporate financial addendum without a subpoena is strictly prohibited. I looked at the ledger pressed against her blouse. I didn't argue. Before she could slide it completely off the counter, I pulled out my phone and snapped a clear photo of the open page. I didn't need their copy machine. The forgery was permanently logged in the county archives. I just needed to put the right man in a room with it. What would a man with hands like cinder blocks do when he saw that blue ink I parked in our driveway just after 2 o'clock? A thick, padded courier envelope leaned against the front door, addressed to Derek. The return label belonged to a third-party document archiving service. Derek usually handled all the mail. Today, my schedule had shifted by exactly 1 hour. I carried the envelope into the kitchen and slid a paring knife under the flap. A stack of old, archived, notarized exchanges slid out onto the granite island. I flipped through the heavy stock paper, scanning for anything connected to the LLC. Stuck between a property survey and a routine tax form was a printed email thread. The sender was Chloe. The date stamped at the top was exactly 2 months before they bought the hidden house. I read my younger sister's words. It was not a message from a desperate, helpless single mother asking her brother-in-law for a bailout. It was a step-by-step instruction manual. Chloe outlined exactly how Derek could bypass the joint credit alarms by funneling the money through a commercial addendum. She specifically detailed how to use my senior escrow credentials to blind stamp the final transfer. She even mapped out my Tuesday afternoon meeting schedule to time the submission perfectly. I traced her name with my fingernail. For 30 years, I believed I was protecting a fragile girl who just had bad luck in life. I had absorbed her punishments, paid her debts, and defended her against our parents. I wasn't protecting her. I was her primary target. My family loyalty died right there on the granite counter. Chloe was never the victim. She was the architect. Tires crunched on the gravel outside. The deadbolt clicked. Derek was home 3 hours before his usual time. I scooped up the courier stack, the 60-page registry printout, and Chloe's email. I shoved the entire pile into the bottom drawer of the pantry and kicked it shut. The wood clicked into place just as Derek walked into the kitchen. He paused, loosening his silk tie. "You're home early." "A slow day at the title company," I said. My voice did not shake. He didn't look closely at me. He opened the refrigerator, took out a bottle of sparkling water, and drank from it. He stood in the center of the house he was secretly leveraging to build a life with my sister, completely at ease. "Clear your morning schedule tomorrow," he said, walking past me toward the stairs. My phone buzzed on the counter. It was a formal calendar invite from Derek, followed immediately by a text message. "Meet me at the company closing room tomorrow at 9 sharp. We are signing the paperwork for a business expansion loan. I need your notary stamp." He was setting the final trap. He wanted to use my own professional credentials one last time to lock me into a massive, fraudulent debt. He thought I would sit at that table and hand him the pen. I looked at the closed pantry drawer. I didn't type a reply. I just checked the clock on the stove. 18 hours left. The closing room at the title company was kept at 65 degrees. A representative from the commercial bank sat quietly in the corner chair, waiting to witness the signatures. Derek wore a custom navy suit. He sat across from me at the massive mahogany table, practically radiating confidence. He slid the thick mortgage refinance contract toward me, placing a silver pen directly on top of the signature line. "Just sign right there, Meg," Derek said. His voice was warm, coated in that perfect husband charm. He reached across the table and patted the back of my hand. "This loan expands the business. It secures our future for the next 10 years. I promise you, everything gets better from here." I did not pick up the pen. I pulled my hand away from his. I looked past him, watching the frosted glass door of the conference room. It swung open. Marcus walked in. He wore his heavy work boots, looking completely out of place in the sterile legal office. He held the calendar invite I had emailed him from a burner account at midnight. Derek frowned, half standing. "Marcus, what are you doing here? We're closing a private loan." I unzipped my leather tote bag. I pulled out the 60-page registry printout, the hidden LLC ownership transfer papers, and a glossy printed photograph of the forged wire authorization. I dropped the entire stack into the center of the table. "No," I said. "You are funding a second family." Derek lunged across the mahogany wood. He clawed at the documents, trying to scoop them back into a pile. "She's insane," Derek yelled, looking wildly at his brother. "Marcus, she printed fake deeds. She's forging corporate documents to frame me. Don't look at that garbage." Marcus didn't listen. He reached right over Derek's scrambling hands and snatched the LLC ownership transfer papers. He looked at the attached wire authorization. He stared at the bright blue ink. He saw the slanted M with the jagged hook. The thick veins in Marcus's neck bulged against his collar. He roared. He slammed the heavy stack of papers directly into Derek's chest. The pages scattered across the floor. "You stole my project capital to buy a house for her sister." Marcus's voice rattled the glass walls. "We are done. The company is dissolved today." The bank representative frantically packed his briefcase and stood up, witnessing every second of the fraud. Derek's perfect, confident smile vanished. He opened his mouth, but only a wet, stammering sound came out. His knees physically buckled under his tailored suit. He fell backward, dropping heavily into the leather chair. He couldn't even look at me. Derek sat slumped in the leather chair, staring at the scattered papers. His chest heaved. He looked up at his brother, the panic finally breaking through his tailored suit. "I can fix this," Derek said. His voice cracked. "Marcus, listen to me. I'll sell the house. Chloe's house. I'll list it this afternoon. I can repay every cent to the commercial fund. Just don't dissolve the company." He was willing to throw my sister to the wolves to save his own skin. I stood up. My chair scraped softly against the carpet. I reached into my tote bag one last time and pulled out a single sheet of paper. It wasn't a complex corporate ledger. It was a standard, red-stamped bank foreclosure notice. I slid it across the mahogany table until it stopped directly in front of him. "You can't sell a house the bank already seized?" I said. My voice was quiet, but in that silent room, it carried perfectly. Derek stared at the red stamp. "You used the construction firm's active projects as collateral for the hidden mortgage," I told him. "When Marcus officially notified the bank, he was pulling his capital 15 minutes ago. Your commercial loans went into default. The system automatically locked down the residential deed." Derek's mouth opened, but he had nothing left to say. "Chloe isn't getting a payout," I said. "She's getting an eviction notice taped to her front door right now. You two can finally figure out how to put a roof over your own son's head. I'm done paying for it." His final escape route was gone. The unforgivable lie he built with my sister was completely bankrupt. I zipped my bag closed, turned my back on my husband, and walked out of the conference room, leaving both of them sitting in the wreckage. Marcus didn't wait. He filed the formal dissolution of their commercial construction firm on Friday morning at exactly 9 o'clock. The swiftness of the filing pushed Derek into immediate financial ruin without his brother's backing. Derek had no active income, a mountain of defaulted commercial loans, and an impending state fraud investigation hanging over his head. I didn't stick around to watch the fallout. I filed the divorce papers, forced the immediate liquidation of our remaining legitimate assets, and walked away with my original $124,500. I didn't ask for alimony. I just took exactly what was mine. 3 months later, I sat in a quiet, sunlit cafe in a different city. My new apartment was small, the walls painted a stark white, but the locks belonged only to me. I was having coffee with a woman named Sarah, a new acquaintance from my neighborhood. We spent an hour talking about ordinary things, no hidden ledgers, no secret family trusts. When the waiter dropped the small black booklet on our table, Sarah reached for her purse. "Let's just split it down the middle," she said lightly, pulling out her credit card. "It's so much easier that way." I didn't reach for my card. I reached for the pen in my bag. "I'd rather see the itemized receipt," I said. Sarah paused, her hand hovering over the table. She gave me a slightly confused smile, but she pulled the slip of paper out and handed it to me. I laid the receipt flat on the table. I went down the printed lines, calculating the exact cost of my black coffee and my pastry. I factored in the local tax. I calculated the tip down to the exact cent. I wrote my precise total on the signature line. I didn't explain myself, and I didn't apologize. I just made absolutely sure that my name and my money would never be blindly tied to someone else's debt again. I looked out the cafe window at the quiet street. I was completely safe. I was also completely alone. A forged deed can steal a house, but it can never buy you a home. I know exactly what you were screaming at your screen right now. You were yelling, "Julia, you are a licensed escrow officer. How could you let him manage the joint savings for 6 years without ever looking at the bank statements?" It is so easy to judge from the outside, but when you are dealing with a toxic dynamic, especially one involving a master manipulator and a family you've been trained your whole life to protect, logic gets warped. Think of it like a slot machine. Toxic people don't treat you horribly 100% of the time. If they did, you would leave immediately. Instead, they give you breadcrumbs of normalcy, a sweet anniversary dinner, a compliment about how lucky they are to have you. You keep pulling the lever, putting your trust and your money in, waiting for that jackpot of a normal, loving family that they promise is just around the corner. That intermittent reinforcement is what keeps smart, capable women trapped in the dark. But let's look at how Julia broke the machine. She used 3 brilliant techniques of self-defense that we can all learn from. First, the silent audit. When Derek insulted her about the missing money in the living room, she didn't throw a screaming fit. Confrontation without proof just gives a liar the chance to hide the evidence. She locked her door and quietly pulled the old invoices. Silence is a predator's worst nightmare, because they can't see what you are building. Second, the verification trap. She didn't confront Derek at home where he felt comfortable. She let him think he was in absolute control, luring her to the closing table. Then she invited Marcus. She knew Derek could gaslight her, but he couldn't gaslight his own brother looking at a forged signature in bright blue ink. Finally, the cross-collateral lock. She didn't argue with her sister. She didn't beg for her money back. She simply used the financial system's own rigid rules to cut off their escape route. By understanding the mechanics of the loan, she let the bank do the dirty work of evicting Chloe. You are worth so much more than a forged promise or a breadcrumb of affection. If you have ever had to rebuild your life and enforce strict financial boundaries just to feel safe, drop your story in the comments below. We read every single one. And if this story made you feel seen today, hit that subscribe button. We have a lot more justice to serve.